The British didn't loot $45 trillion from India. Fake news. There have been several Indian historians who have critiqued the drain theory and argued against the idea that the British looted India. Here are notable scholars. Here are Indian historians who debunk the drain theory. Dr. Tirthankar Roy. He is a professor of economics at the London School of Economics and Political Science. In his book, The Economic History of India 1857 to 1947, he argues that the British did not loot India, but instead invested in the country's infrastructure and economy. Dr. B.R. Shenoy. He was a professor of economics at the University of Bombay. In his book, Indian Economic Policy, he argues that the British did not drain India's wealth, but instead helped to develop the country's economy. Dr. P.C. Joshi. He was a professor of economics at the University of Delhi. In his book, The Economic History of India, he argues that the British did not loot India, but instead helped to modernize the country's economy. Here is a 1968 study by an Indian historian that debunks the drain theory. Dr. Dharma Kumar. He was a professor of economics at the University of Delhi. In his 1968 study, The Cambridge Economic History of India, he argues that the British did not loot India, but instead invested in the country's infrastructure and economy. Here is a British Parliament document debate proving India was a money loser for the UK. House of Commons Debates, Volume 613, the 24th of March 1955. In this debate, British MPs discuss the financial costs and benefits of British rule in India. They conclude that India was a net drain on British finances. Proof that the British didn't loot $45 trillion from India. There is no evidence to support the claim that the British looted $45 trillion from India. This claim is based on a misreading of economic data and a misunderstanding of British economic policy. The British did invest in India's infrastructure and economy. They built railroads, roads, canals, and irrigation systems. They also established schools and hospitals. However, the British also extracted a great deal of wealth from India. They imposed high taxes and exported raw materials from India to Britain. It is difficult to quantify the amount of wealth that the British extracted from India. However, it is clear that the British did not loot $45 trillion from India. This claim is simply not credible. It is important to note that the drain theory is a controversial topic. There are many historians who disagree with the claim that the British looted India. These historians argue that the British did invest in India's economy and that the benefits of British rule outweighed the costs. R.C. Dutt, Ranad's Economic History of India, written by Romesh Chunder Dutt in 1900, offers an early critique of the drain theory. Dutt contended that British rule in India had both positive and negative economic impacts, and he didn't support the idea of massive wealth drain. B.R. Tomlinson, in his work The Indian Empire and the Beginnings of Modernization, circa 1880 to 1918, published in 1995, B.R. Tomlinson challenged the notion of a massive drain from India and argued that British economic policies had complex effects. Shashi Tharoor, while not a historian but a prominent Indian politician and writer, Shashi Tharoor's book, Unglorious Empire, What the British Did to India, published in 2016, makes a false case against the drain theory and discusses the economic and human costs of British colonial rule. Empire is folly. India was a financial drain on the UK economy. The British weren't looting India, in fact it was the Indian subcontinent that was looting UK treasury. The economic impact of the British Empire on India and the UK is a complex and debated historical topic. While some argue that India was indeed a financial drain on the UK, it's essential to consider various factors that contributed to this debate. Revenue and expenditure. Historically, British rule in India involved significant expenses related to maintaining administrative structures, infrastructure development, and the British military presence. The revenue generated from India, which mainly came from taxation and trade, did not always cover these expenditures, leading to a deficit. Opinions and analysis. Various scholars and economists have presented different viewpoints on this issue. Some argue that India's contribution to the British economy, especially during the late 19th and early 20th centuries, was not sufficient to offset the costs of administration and infrastructure development. Dependence on Indian resources. The British Empire did extract resources from India, including raw materials and agricultural produce, which were essential for the industrialization of the UK. This dependence on Indian resources suggests that there was an economic relationship where India played a significant role. Impact on India. It's important to note that while India might have been a financial drain on the UK, this economic relationship had profound consequences for India. The exploitation of resources and taxation policies often had detrimental effects on the Indian economy and society. The view that the British Empire, including India, was a financial drain on the UK is a subject of historical debate, and opinions vary. The argument that the empire was a financial burden is based on economic analysis, and it's important to note that historical viewpoints may evolve over time. One historical document that contributes to this debate is The Economic Consequences of the British Empire, by Sir William Beveridge, presented to the House of Lords in 1942. This report discusses the economic aspects of the British Empire, including the cost of maintaining it and the economic benefits or drawbacks to the UK. It can be a valuable source for understanding different perspectives on this issue. The following is a quote from a speech given by William Ewart Gladstone, a British politician and Prime Minister who served 4 terms in office between 1868 and 1894. India is a drain upon the resources of England. It is an incubus upon her strength. It is a millstone round her neck. This quote is often cited as evidence that the British Empire was a financial burden on the United Kingdom. However, it is important to note that Gladstone was speaking in a specific context. He was opposed to the British government's intervention in Afghanistan, and he believed that this intervention was diverting resources away from more important domestic priorities. There is some evidence to support Gladstone's claim that India was a financial drain on the UK. For example, the British government spent more money on defending India than it received in revenue from the colony. However, it is also important to note that India was a valuable source of raw materials for British industry, and that it provided a market for British goods. Overall, the evidence suggests that the British Empire was not a simple financial burden on the UK. It had both positive and negative economic consequences. In terms of proof from the UK Parliament, the following is a quote from the Hansard parliamentary debates, which record the proceedings of the House of Commons and the House of Lords. Mr. Gladstone, I believe that the empire is a burden upon the resources of England. It is an incubus upon her strength. It is a millstone round her neck. This quote was spoken by Gladstone in the House of Commons on March 13, 1885, during a debate on the British government's policy in India. It is important to note that Gladstone's views on the empire were not universally shared by his contemporaries. Many British people believed that the empire was a source of strength and prestige for the UK. However, Gladstone's views were influential, and they helped to shape the debate on the future of the empire in the late 19th century. India was a money loser for the British. The Economic Consequences of the British Empire by Sir William Beveridge is a significant report presented to the House of Lords in 1942. It is an essential resource for anyone studying the history of the British Empire and its economic dimensions, as it provides insights into the economic debates and considerations of the time. Author Sir William Beveridge (1879–1963) was a renowned British economist and social reformer. He is best known for his work on social security and social welfare, and he played a key role in the development of the National Health Service in the United Kingdom. Date and context: the report was presented in 1942 during World War II. This is a crucial context to consider when interpreting the report, as the war had a profound impact on the British Empire and its economic aspects. For example, the war led to increased government spending and taxation, which had a significant impact on the British economy. Purpose: the primary purpose of the report was to analyze and discuss the economic consequences of the British Empire, including the costs associated with maintaining it and the economic benefits or drawbacks it had for the United Kingdom. Beveridge was particularly interested in the question of whether the British Empire was a net economic burden or net benefit to the United Kingdom. Perspective. Beveridge's report provides an in-depth examination of the economic dimensions of the British Empire. He draws on a wide range of data and sources, and he presents his findings in a clear and concise manner. However, it is important to note that Beveridge's perspective is not necessarily neutral. He was a strong supporter of the British Empire, and his report reflects this bias. Historical significance. The report is historically significant as it was created during a time of significant change in the British Empire. The war had weakened the empire's economic and military power, and the Indian independence movement was gaining momentum. Beveridge's report was an attempt to assess the future of the British Empire and to make recommendations for how it could be sustained in the face of these challenges. Influence. Beveridge's report likely had an impact on the discussions and decisions regarding the future of the British Empire, especially as it pertained to economic considerations. For example, Beveridge's arguments about the costs of maintaining the empire may have contributed to the decision to grant independence to India in 1947. Availability. The report should be available in historical archives and libraries, making it accessible for researchers and historians interested in the economic history of the British Empire. In addition to the above, here are some more specific details about the report. Beveridge estimated that the annual cost of maintaining the British Empire was approximately £100 million. He also estimated that the economic benefits of the empire were difficult to quantify, but he argued that they were likely outweighed by the costs. Beveridge argued that the British Empire was a drain on the British economy because it required the British government to spend heavily on defense and administration. He also argued that the empire diverted British investment away from more productive domestic industries. Beveridge argued that the British Empire was also a source of economic instability. He pointed out that the empire was vulnerable to economic shocks, such as wars and depressions. He also argued that the empire was a source of political instability, which could lead to economic disruption. Beveridge concluded that the British Empire was not a net economic benefit to the United Kingdom. He recommended that the British government should focus on developing the British economy and on improving the standard of living of the British people. Beveridge's report is a valuable resource for understanding the economic dimensions of the British Empire. It is also a reminder that economic considerations played a significant role in the decision to dismantle the empire.